You think she's waiting for the perfect line, the clever opener, the flawless delivery. But here's the truth. She's not listening to your words. She's feeling your presence. Before you even speak, she already knows, whether you're hiding or here. Most men don't realize this. They walk into conversations trying to win, trying to impress. But what they don't understand is this. Seduction doesn't start with words. It starts with energy. A woman doesn't crave a man who performs. She craves a man who's comfortable in silence, who doesn't flinch when things get real, who can hold eye contact, not to dominate, but to say without saying, "I'm right here, all of me." And that's rare, because most men never learn to bring their full self into a moment. They learn how to be strategic, funny, polished, but not how to be real, not how to be vulnerable without collapsing, not how to be grounded without needing control. So they chase connection and never find it. Because connection doesn't come from chasing. It comes from presence. And presence can't be faked. It's the quality of attention you offer when you're not trying to get anything. It's the space between your words, the steadiness in your breath, the part of you that says, "I don't need you to complete me. I'm whole, but I'm open." She doesn't want your resume. She wants your truth. And if you can give her that, without shame, without a script, you become unforgettable. So many men walk into a room and think they need to be impressive. They rehearse clever lines, flex the right angles, flash that curated smile. They've read the books, watched the podcasts, learned the moves, but still, she looks at them and sees nothing. Not because they're not attractive, but because they're not here. They are present, but they are not with her. And that is a difference between attention and connection. A woman doesn't need a man who performs. She needs a man who arrives, fully, quietly, steadily. Not as a role, not as a tactic, but as someone who dares to bring his whole self into the room. And what she feels isn't what you say. She feels what you're trying to hide. She senses when you speak to be liked, versus when you speak because something real is alive in you. She listens to the weight behind your words, to your pauses, to how you look away or stay. You don't need to impress her. You need to risk being seen. And this is where most men fall short. Not because they're weak, but because they've never been taught that masculinity is presence, not performance. So they chase, they show off, they pretend they're unaffected. But nothing is more repelling to a woman than a man who cannot be still in his truth. You think she wants a confident guy. What she really wants is a man who isn't afraid of silence. A man who can sit in the space between words without shrinking or rushing to fill the air. You can have 6 figures, you can have 6 abs, but if your soul doesn't show up, she'll feel it, instantly. Because what she's looking for is not a perfect man. She's looking for a man who is actually here. She's not decoding your sentences. She's reading your nervous system. She feels the hesitation in your breath, the need in your eyes, the way your voice betrays the performance underneath. When you talk to her, what matters isn't the content, it's the frequency. Are you speaking from a place of lack or from depth? Are you trying to get a reaction or offering reflection? You think confidence is loud, but real confidence is quiet, still. It doesn't rush to fill the silence. It lets her unfold, without pushing, without pulling. Because here's the thing, A woman doesn't want to be conquered. She wants to be met, fully, honestly, with nothing in your hands but your truth. She can feel when you're trying to steer the moment, to direct the vibe, to manage her perception of you, and it kills the energy, instantly. Why? Because it tells her, you don't trust the moment. And if you can't trust the moment, she can't trust you. Real attraction isn't sparked by technique. It's born from a man who is willing to be seen without needing to be liked. A man who doesn't rush the conversation because he isn't in a hurry to prove himself. A man who listens with his entire body, not just to respond, but to actually feel her. The texture of her tone. The subtle pause between her thoughts. The way her energy shifts when she speaks about something that matters. Most men hear her words, few hear her soul. You want to stand out? Then stop trying to impress her and start trying to feel her. Let your presence say what your words never could. I see you. Not just the parts you show, all of you. And I'm not going anywhere. Because the deepest intimacy is not built through intensity. It's built through safety. And when she feels safe to unfold, without being judged, fixed, or managed, she begins to give you everything, effortlessly. You've been taught to show your best side, to keep it cool, stay in control, to always know what to say, to never let her see the part of you that's unsure. But here's the truth. She doesn't want the polished version. She wants the real one. She wants to see the part of you that gets nervous before you speak. The part that pauses. Not because you're confused, but because you actually care what comes next. We've confused vulnerability with weakness. But to a woman, vulnerability is strength. Not because it makes you soft, but because it makes you human. And humans connect, not through perfection, but through honesty. You think you need to perform, but your performance is getting in the way. Because while you're busy trying to look desirable, you're forgetting to feel her. To slow down long enough to notice the tiny shifts in her eyes when something lands or misses. To notice when she gets quiet. And instead of panicking, you stay present with her silence. She doesn't need you to solve her. She needs to know she can unravel around you, and that you won't run, judge, or try to clean it up. That you can hold space for a storm without being blown away. That's what turns her on. Not bravado, not lines, but your capacity to hold what's real. Every time you drop the mask, every time you speak from your gut instead of a script, you give her permission to do the same. That's when something changes. That's when she stops performing too. That's when you move out of the shallow dance of attraction and into the current of something much deeper. Mutual surrender. You're not chasing her anymore. You're not chasing validation. You're simply there, breathing, watching, feeling, fully alive, in the moment you're both creating, together. And that's where the real magic lives, not in the outcome, but in the moment when neither of you is trying to get somewhere, because being here is enough. Most men rush. They rush the moment, the touch, the conversation. Not because they don't care, but because they're afraid of what lives in stillness. They're afraid that if they slow down, they'll lose her. But what they don't realize is that's the very thing that's pushing her away. Because a woman doesn't want to be consumed. She wants to be cherished. And cherishing doesn't happen in a hurry. When you speak too fast, move too fast, decide too fast, you send her a signal. I'm not really here with you. I'm chasing a result. But when you slow down, something shifts. Your energy becomes grounded. Your voice settles. Your presence expands. And she begins to breathe differently around you. You stop being a man who wants something from her and become a man who simply wants to feel the moment with her. That difference is everything. Because intimacy doesn't come from speed. It comes from rhythm. From knowing how to let a pause stretch long enough to become charged. From letting your gaze rest, not on her body, but in her being. From knowing when not to speak, because silence is saying more than words ever could. Slowness is not hesitation. It's control. Not over her, but over yourself. And when you stop rushing, you give her space to soften, to trust. To let her nervous system shift out of defense and into desire. Because desire doesn't bloom under pressure. It blooms in safety, in curiosity, in the space between your touch and your next word, where she realizes, I don't need to perform here. I can just be. Most men are sprinting toward the finish line, but the men who captivate her, they walk slowly through the garden, not to pick the flower, but to admire its unfolding. We don't talk about this enough, but I'll say it plainly. Gentleness is power, not weakness, not submission, but the kind of power that doesn't need to shout, because it already knows exactly who it is. Most men confuse strength with tension, with stoicism, with emotional distance. But real strength is the opposite. It's relaxed. It's rooted. It's stable enough to stay open. A woman doesn't fall for a man who dominates the room. She falls for the man who can soften without losing himself. The man who knows how to touch with presence, speak with warmth, listen with stillness. The man who doesn't flinch when her emotions swell, who doesn't interrupt when her story spirals, who doesn't try to fix her pain like it's a problem, because he understands she's not broken, she's just human. And when she feels that kind of gentleness, the kind that holds space without collapsing, that honors her chaos without needing to control it, she begins to open in ways no technique could ever unlock. Because gentleness is what tells her, you're safe here, even in your mess. And nothing creates more erotic charge than safety. Not the safety of comfort, but the safety of emotional depth. The kind of safety that says, I won't run from your fire. I'll sit with it. Most men shut down when she gets emotional. Or worse, they try to solve it. But she's not asking you to solve anything. She's asking you to feel it with her. To let it move through the space between you without trying to tidy it up. When you can meet her in her tenderness, without shrinking or puffing up, you become a mirror. One that shows her. You don't need to be less than you are to be loved. And that's where her true beauty begins to bloom. Not in perfection, but in presence. Not in control, but in connection. Not in performance, but in truth. Confidence isn't something you project. It's something you embody. It's the quiet solidity that says, I know who I am, and I'm not here to convince you. You don't need to puff up. You don't need to perform. Because when you belong to yourself, you don't walk into a room hoping to be chosen. You walk in to choose, with presence, with discernment, with self-respect. That shift changes everything. You stop asking, am I enough for her? And you start wondering, is this connection worthy of my energy, my depth, my time? And that, paradoxically, is what makes you magnetic. Because a woman can feel when your sense of self doesn't hinge on her response. She knows when your desire comes from fullness, not from craving. She knows when you're choosing her out of freedom, not out of fear. And that's the space where trust begins. Not because you try to earn it, but because you carry yourself like a man who doesn't need to be saved, fixed, or validated. You're not seeking permission to exist. You're offering an invitation into a space that's already whole. And when she feels that you can handle her no just as gracefully as her yes, she relaxes. She opens. Because she knows she's not being used to complete your identity. That's the secret most men miss. It's not what you give her that makes her trust you. It's how you hold yourself when you receive nothing in return. And when you hold your center in rejection, in silence, in uncertainty, she sees a man she can trust with her truth. Because he's already trusted his own. You want her to feel safe with you? Be the kind of man who's already safe within himself. Not guarded, not walled off, but clear, present, unmoved by approval, because your worth is not up for negotiation. That's the kind of man who doesn't chase. He attracts. Because everything about him says, "You're welcome to join me, but I was whole before you came." Every word you speak to her is a reflection of how you speak to yourself when no one's watching. You can't fake presence. You can't pretend to be grounded, because a woman can sense the gap between your words and your truth, between your polished exterior and your inner chaos. So when you speak to her, you're not just reaching out, you're revealing who's in there. And if what's inside is self-rejection, desperation, performance, she will feel that. Not because you said the wrong thing, but because you came from a place that didn't know its own worth. But when you speak from a place of truth, from a heart that has made peace with its shadows, your words carry a different weight. They're not impressive. They're real. You stop trying to win her. You start offering her a space to simply be. And in return, she offers herself more freely. Not out of pressure, but out of resonance. Because here's the truth. The deepest intimacy is not something you get from her. It's something you unlock together. When you're both willing to be seen in your messy, magnificent wholeness. She doesn't want you to save her. She doesn't want you to fix her. She wants to know that she can lose herself with you and still be safe, still be held. But that only happens when you have already learned how to hold yourself. So ask yourself this. Before you try to speak to her soul, have you spoken to your own? Before you crave her presence, have you learned to sit with your own loneliness? Your fears, your hunger, your tenderness? Because the way you show up with her will always mirror how you've been showing up with you. This isn't about tactics. This isn't about seduction techniques or what to say on a first date. This is about the man you are when you're alone, when the world is quiet, when no one's looking. Because intimacy doesn't start when you touch her body. It starts when you touch your own heart, honestly, fearlessly, tenderly. So pause, breathe, reflect. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to come back to who you really are. Speak from that place. Live from that place. And the right woman won't need to be chased. She'll feel you. She'll trust you. She'll choose you. Not because you convinced her, but because you finally chose yourself. If something in these words spoke to you, if it echoed a truth you felt but couldn't name, then maybe this space is meant for you. Drop a thought in the comments, not for attention, but for connection. Because real conversations don't end when the video does. They begin. And if you want more of this, more depth, more honesty, more soul, subscribe. Not just to a channel, but to a different kind of dialogue. We don't chase algorithms here. We speak to the heart. So if yours is listening, you know what to do.